I don't know why this thing is so tiny. Ah, there we go. Yeah. Sorry about that. All right, let's get back to it. Chapter 4. We're going to find out whether Henry is in fact as brave as he claims that. Well, I guess he never really claimed to be so brave. He's concerned whether he's brave or not. Title's a red badge of courage. Remember that red is the color of blood and bravery and sacrifice. So we'll have to see, what happens there. Chapter 4. The noise in front grew to a mighty roar. That's sort of an animal image again associated with war, the roar of combat. The youth and his companions were frozen to silence. They could see a flag that whipped in the smoke angrily. Near it were moving forms of troops. There came a rushing stream of men across the fields. Another group, changing position at a fast pace, scattered them right and left. Bullets began to whistle among the branches of the trees. Showers of pine needles and pieces of wood came falling down. It was as if thousands of axes were being used. That's an interesting sort of simile as well. But look at this. Here's our first real combat. You can sort of see the soldiers in this forested grove laying down, and the bullets are flying overhead, and little pieces of trees are falling down on them in sort of a rain. It's a good, strong imagery. This is one of the reasons that Crane is a famous author, is he really captures the details of battle very well, and I think that's important in creating a believable scene. The lieutenant of the youth's regiment was shot in the hand. He began to curse so magnificently that a nervous laugh went through the regiment. It relieved the tightened senses of the men. The officer held his hand carefully away from the side so that the blood would not drop upon his trousers. The captain of the regiment, putting his sword under his arm, produced a handkerchief and began to bind the lieutenant's wound, and they argued about how the binding should be done. The battle flag in the distance danced about madly. That's personification too. The flags don't dance, right? But you're getting an image of it almost as a living thing. It seemed to be struggling to free itself from a frightful pain. The clouds of smoke were filled with flashes. Fast-running men came through the smoke. They grew in numbers until it was seen that many brigades were running away. Now here's Henry afraid that he's going to run, and there's men running towards him who are fleeing the battle. Now remember that so many of the problems of the Union armies had to do with attacking in small groups. Instead of sending everybody all at once, one group will go and then another group will go, and so each of them faces the massed fire of the Confederate forces and ends up breaking and running individually, and that sort of seems like what's happened here. Let's see. The flag suddenly sank down as if dying. Its motion as it fell was a movement of despair. Wild shouts came from behind the walls of smoke. A mob of men rushed past like wild horses. The experienced regiments on the right and left of the youth's regiment, the 304th, immediately began to call out bitter jokes. With the passionate song of the bullets and the bursts of gunfire were mixed loud remarks and bits of advice concerning places of safety. But the new regiment was breathless with terror. The youth looked along the blue line of his regiment. The men were motionless, stone. That's a metaphor. They're obviously not stone. And afterward he remembered that the flag bearer was standing with his legs apart as if he expected to be pushed to the ground. There's a lot of focus on flags and flag bearers as symbols of the armies or units themselves, and I think that's important. That goes back to Roman times. In the Roman eagle, there would be a standard bearer. And again, there's a lot about battle, even during as recent a time as the Civil War, that sort of echoes these really ancient traditions of combat. The commander of the brigade was rushing around screaming. His horse often threatened the running men, but they escaped with unusual luck. In this rush, they apparently could not hear or see. They paid no attention even to the largest and longest of the curses that were thrown at them from all directions. Frequently, over this wild scene could be heard the jokes of the experienced soldiers, but the running men apparently were not even aware of this attention. The battle look that shone for an instant on the faces in the mad current of men made the youth feel that forceful hands from heaven could not hold him in place if he could get simple control of his legs. So it sounds like he wants to run with them, but he hasn't had an opportunity to do so. The sight of this mad river, that'd be like a river of men running past them, had a flood-like force that seemed able to drag sticks and stones and men from the ground. But the youth in his regiment had to keep their place. They grew pale and firm and red and shaking. It's really interesting that these are sort of two paradoxical things. Pale and firm. You think if you were getting pale, you'd be shaky, right? But then they get red and shaking. Red you'd think is the color of courage. So he puts these things in sort of weird paradoxical ways. I think it shows you that the men don't really know which way to go. Are they courageous and firm, or are they scared and shaking? Anyway, the youth accomplished one little thought in the middle of this madness. The frightful thing which had caused the other troops to run had not then appeared. He determined to get a view of it, and then he thought he might very likely run better than the best of them. Short chapter. We didn't get the climax we were looking for, so we will get to chapter 5 next time. But we're getting an image of fighting, and now Henry's seen other men running away. So if he runs, it won't just be him. And he seems, like maybe you should discuss this. Talk to somebody who else is reading the book with you. Is Henry going to run or not? What do you think? We've been given enough imagery of his personality, enough of his thought processes. Which way is he leaning right now? How do you think it's going to go? Why? Talk it over. Let's do that. Thanks. I will see you next time.